We've been looking for ways to work less for about 20 years now.
The ABS reckons that the average working hours of a full-time employee peaked at 41.5 hours per week in the year 2000 and have been mostly decreasing since then. Our American brethren are similar heel-draggers. The first quarter of 2016 saw the biggest slump in worker productivity since 1993, and some HR consultants are calling for the revision of the standard 9-to-5 workday paradigm.
Managers have tried numerous approaches to improve workplace productivity in the face of all this slacking off. And into this arena steps gamification. The theory has been around for about 20 years and is pretty straightforward.
The basic gist is that you can improve someone's performance by applying game elements to their tasks. The theory goes that these elements serve to reframe our thinking, making dull tasks more interesting and eventually leading to permanent behavioural change.
Gamification is underpinned primarily by the psychology of games and motivation. Most frequently, this refers to self-determination theory, which is a motivational model for understanding what and how human behaviour is initiated and regulated, and describes the human need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. In practice, this means engaging participants through a variety of extrinsic and intrinsic motivators.
Cardador et al. Recommend achieving this through two pathways, informational and affective. The informational pathway provides quick access to personal performance information. The affective pathway makes tasks more enjoyable by disguising how boring they actually are.
The actual elements that can be used to gamify a task can vary depending on the outcomes to be achieved.
They can include extrinsic motivators, such as points, rewards, and badges, and intrinsic rewards, such as narrative, challenge, sense of control, decision-making, and a sense of mastery.
The actual benefits you acquire will depend on which of these elements that you use. Research has shown that the use of extrinsic motivators can lead to an increased sense of task meaningfulness, where intrinsic elements such as narrative and avatars can provide a sense of social relatedness.
The thing is, all this stuff looks good on paper, but simply adding points and competition isn't a silver bullet towards employee engagement. Sales teams have used friendly and not so friendly competition for years without being accused of gamification.
Because just as games themselves take a long time to test issues of balance, inputs, and agency, so too do gamified systems need to consider these various mechanics.
There's a lot going on under the hood of your typical game, and it's these elements that make them more than just a collection of overlapping rule sets with a theme draped over the top. There's a sense of presence and immersion, the feeling of interacting with a virtual environment and feeling like you have an influence over its events. There's a state of flow that comes from losing your sense of self and almost becoming one with the game and its mechanics. There's the motivation that comes from that sense of challenge, exploration, mastery, or socialization.
And of course the big one, fun. With all that to keep track of, it's easy to feel like remembering all these different types of motivation, the mechanics going on underneath, and the need to make it all fun for your employees is just too much. But it's not necessarily that bad.
You start by getting people involved. Keep participation optional, simple and accessible, and offer rewards for doing so. Once the player has grasped the basics, make it a bit harder, and offer more challenging tasks for greater reward. Once you've kept them engaged for this long, it starts to become habit forming, as players feel that sense of flow. Increase the challenge again and again, so that it builds up and eases off each time the player's skill level adjusts to the challenge, ending with a sense of mastery over the game's systems.
This ending is important. A gamified system that goes on for too long will bore players and eventually wear out its welcome. One that's too short won't seem like worth the effort of setting it up to begin with. So let's try this in action. Say you've got a TV ad sales team and you want to boost flagging performance.
You spend the first fiscal quarter of the year gathering sales data and quietly alpha testing your game's benchmarks. This allows you to run your gamified system in quarter 2. That way, it's a nice set time frame and you can break it up into smaller monthly and weekly chunks. Plus, it allows everyone to have a goal at the end of the year to work towards.
The sales team are given the choice to participate in your new game, Space Scrubbers, where the goal is to rid the solar system of the terrifying stellar moths that have infested the space lanes.
Players create an avatar and then pick a path to travel between map locations. They progress by defeating the stellar moths through the completion of daily tasks, selling advertising space, achieving a set number of daily client contacts, and following up on work with admin, production, and traffic teams.
The targets can vary between each participant depending on their individual performance. Once each lane has been cleared, roughly about once a week, they get to fight a mini-boss.
The mini-boss mechanic is slightly different, where regular enemies are defeated through task completion, bosses are defeated through puzzle combat style mechanics. As participants fill advertising space and accomplish other goals, they gain these spaces as a resource that can be used to defeat the boss. During the boss battle, the player is shown a small grid which represents each different type of advertising space they've sold: prime time, midday movie, morning show, late night, and so on.
They'll need to work out which of their resources they need to spend in order to do the most damage to the boss.
So, a single use of a prime time slot might do a little damage, but 3 prime time, 2 morning show and an afternoon kids might do significantly more.
This provides a sense of control and challenge to the player. We pair this with a timer to ensure the boss has to be defeated quickly, to provide a sense of urgency and risk, and also to make sure that players don't spend all their time gaming when they should be working. At the completion of the battle, players can land in the liberated territory to replenish and re-equip, and also to gather intel about upcoming battles in the form of key sales information like target demographics, upcoming promotions, and program information.
Then they can level up and choose special powers such as Foresight to see what combos will be needed, or Scavenger to better acquire and reuse combo resources. This provides an additional sense of agency and allows them to customize their playstyle based on their individual strengths.
A branching map with different bosses and loot drops ensures that participants have different experiences to share. A dedicated intranet site and periodic debriefs from the manager provide both encouragement and an emergent narrative, and badges and achievements can be periodically awarded as participants complete set challenges or hit hidden goals, such as hitting a record number of sales for a specific target or beating their year-to-date sales records. That way there's both explicit goals to accomplish, but also the possibility they might unlock hidden challenges through behavioural change. It's pretty easy to see why gamification is becoming the next poster child for education and work psychology. But it's worth remembering that it's still a nascent field, and the jury's still out on whether there's any concrete evidence to support its wider implementation. Criticisms include that it risks trivialising the content being taught, and that it's better for working concepts than with knowledge assimilation. Of course, these issues can be mitigated if the management team are committed to the system and their role within it. There are, however, more problematic issues that are rarely discussed.
Despite the ubiquity of board games and games consoles, we're still nowhere near universal game literacy. What one person might immediately recognise as a health bar, someone else just sees as a meaningless red streak. That means that any gamified system not only has to teach how the game is played, but also how games in general work. Moreover, there's little discussion of the specifics of aesthetic, theme, and user interface design.
Badges are frequently cited as a means of extrinsic motivation, but what should they look like? Cartoony? Realistic? Should they be a permanent part of the game's UI, or should they be physical tokens to be given out? At a more macro level, gamification works best in environments where boredom, repetition, and passivity are prevalent, like in data entry or manufacturing jobs. It's worth remembering though that these are the very industries that are already being transformed by automation and AI, and robots aren't exactly known for benefiting from badges or emergent narrative. Gamification offers a lot that might help transform both education and work. But it's not a silver bullet, and if it's to be implemented, it needs to be thoughtful, strategic, and have the full commitment of management to give participants permission to meaningfully engage with what might seem like playtime at work.